All right. How's everybody doing on this Saturday? My name is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for being here. I am trying to stay warm, probably like most of the population. Trying to stay warm, trying to keep that winter blast from causing issues in my life. You know how that goes. But anyways, I hope that everybody is enjoying their weekend, no matter whatever is going on with you in your weekend. I hope that it's going well. I wanted to hop on here and just not really make it a commentary about any video or anything like that, but just trying to transform this into more of a podcast than anything else. Because you know what? Sitting up here and commentating on stuff that other people do, it's really kind of like to me it's a waste of time. But that's just me. To other people, they might enjoy it, they might, discuss it. To me it's like almost critiquing somebody else's work unless I'm showing my bias on the side that I'm trying to portray. It's kind of like watching an expert or something, and maybe it's somebody that goes against my thought pattern. Maybe it's somebody that goes against what I believe in. And I'm not going to watch them or present them because they go against what I believe in or what I want to present. So I try to find something that is biased to my thought process. And in that retrospect, I want to change my channel to be more like a podcast than anything else. I will still do commentary from time to time. And today I'm going to do a little bit of commentary because I think it's hilarious on some of the stuff that I've been doing on this DoorDash streets that I'm going to show you. Actually, I'm going to show you some footage from the ice storm that we're currently having if I can find it. It's always an adventure in the world of 12 gauge. Here, I found a little bit of footage. Let's go ahead and let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. Let me put this up. What? It says 193. So here we go. So if any of you are in an area where it's extremely cold, I hope that you have what you need in order to
I just slid across the street.
so I'm gonna mute it because I was on the phone with somebody and they were making some weird ass noises. And I don't want everybody to be like, what the hell, 12? What is that? But anyway, that's me driving down the street this morning. And as you can see, it's sized over pretty damn good. I was on my way to get some food this morning, and it's it's sized over pretty good. I'm going to show you another clip that I recorded last night while I was dashing. It was pretty clear probably until I would say um 5:30 yesterday Central. The sky was clear, the roads were clear, and then out of the blue it just started sleeting. It started coming down. So, whenever that happens, it is quite an adventure if you've never driven in that weather before. In 2021, the place where I was living, they had 3 days of snow like this, and it was something that, and it kind of shut down the whole town. So the whole town was shut down, and when that happens, people get very very scared very fast because they don't know what they're going to do with themselves. They don't know what are they supposed to do, what are they supposed to how are they supposed to interact with the necessities that they might need in order to be providing for their families and things like that. It's always an adventure. It is always an adventure. And if you live in the areas where it does snow or it gets icy on a yearly fashion, it's kudos off to you because I'm sure that you're more able to more able to go through that situation than just people like here in Texas that are freaking out. And a lot of people have been panic buying. They have been panic buying. And I don't know if you remember COVID time, but during that time, there wasn't a lot of stuff out there. You had to pretty much go at various times in order to get what you needed as far as supplies, because there was people just hoarding, just being. I don't know. I don't know what it is about the situation such as ice and natural disasters and stuff like that that makes people worry about toilet paper. It's like what about toilet paper means that you have to go and buy up the whole freaking aisle. Here's another here's another video that I'm going to show you of how fast it changed. Like I was saying, it was pretty clear, and then all of a sudden it was not. Let me see what I'm trying to do 5 different things at once. Let me see. This is 189. I tried to make a video for y'all, but for whatever reason it didn't work out. Yeah.
And you can see,
You know how it goes. You get in the truck sometimes, some air just goes out.
now
You
we have
know.
us.
See, I was in the store. I was in the store probably 20 minutes, if that. everything was clear, everything was cool, and then all of a sudden I come out,
Maybe
and
I should have taken.
that's what my windshield looks like. It's totally iced over. It still looks sunny, right? But it is cold. This was yesterday, right before the ice storm hit. And it's really cold, really not a good situation, man. I mean, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go deliver these. Let me tell you what this order was. It was 18 bottles of Gatorade, 18 bottles of those, 28.5 fluid ounce bottles, 18 of those bad boys. There was pecani sauce, there were 2 bags of chips, and there was 5 bags of cookies. So here I am walking out, trying not to fall, with 18 bottles of Gatorade in one hand and the other in the other. And I'm driving, and as you can see, it doesn't look that bad, right? But I'm thinking to myself, you know, if it ices over and I'm carrying these bottles, something bad is going to happen. I'm either going to slip and fall, or something's not going to go right in the world of Gage, because for whatever reason, Murphy's Law follows me around. It really does. What happened, what could happen, does happen usually. You know what I mean? Any of y'all like that? Any of y'all that are watching, or maybe watching on replay, what could happen does happen. And I made it out there with the Gatorade, with all the essentials. And the guy was very thankful, He's, by that point it was coming down, it was hitting in my face. Every step he took, was crinkly because the grass was getting icy. The sleet was coming down you can't really tell it in this video because it's still sunny, but the darker it got, the worse it got. You know what I mean? And it just was a bad time. But you know what? Sometimes you do what you got to do, not because you have to do it, but because it's a personal challenge to yourself. Like this whole door dashing thing, it is a challenge to me. Not because I need the money, not because I need anything from it other than the challenge. The challenge to be better for the person I'm serving. Like the customer at the end of the journey is the one who wins. And I try to be the best person delivering whatever it is that they're asking for, because I understand what it's like. Door dashing something and your order gets there, it's slopped around everywhere, your drinks are dripping all over each other, and all that stuff. Any of you have ever had that happen? Please, I know that you can relate to that. So as you see me driving, you understand that this was a hell of a night, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. But I got on here not to really show you my escapades of door dashing. I like sharing those with you guys, but I didn't get on here to do all that. I mostly got on here because my channel is about true crime and it is about investigative techniques. I got on here to talk about some of the stuff that we are seeing regarding investigation on YouTube. The investigative tactics that many people, for whatever reason, whatever mindset they might have, do not understand the investigative tactics. And I, as you know, am not a forensic analyst or any of that stuff, but I did take some forensic classes and some investigative classes not too long ago. I just got my bachelor's in criminal justice. So, I'm going to speak on it the way I understand it. The way I understand it. And when that happens, whenever you're looking at certain things, such as pictures, such as videos, such as documents, or even just a tag that you see next to next to potential evidence. Let me see if I got anything on here that I can show as an example, because I have a lot of stuff on this computer. Let me see if I have something that I can show as an example. Of course, my favorite, topic is the 4, because I've spent so much time on it. I know it pretty well. You get what I'm saying? So whenever I do speak on this stuff, it's easy to use that as a training mantra or whatever you want to call it. I'm looking to see if I can find just any kind of photo that I can use as an investigative quality, because I know I have to have something. I've downloaded so much stuff that I have to have something in here to show as an example. Maybe not. Maybe not on this. Those of you that watch the Killing Fields, you understand, as I was walking through the Killing Fields with my friend, you do understand that that area was once evidence, right? It still is. It's still an active crime scene because they've yet to find the killer. So in all actuality, it is still an active crime scene. Anything that is found there or that you might come across is considered evidence. So while we're walking, I know we're joking about the mattresses and stuff, but I didn't think about it until after the fact that, you know what? Anything after that crime was potentially evidence. Even that mattress. Let me use this as an example. Let me pull this up on the screen. For any of you that have followed this case at all, you understand what this area is, right? You understand exactly what this area is. And I don't even know who I got this from or who sent this to me, but it has a bunch of labels. Okay? So right here is the 1122 house, right? Here are the Queen Road Apartments. Here's 1330 Linda Lane camera. There's 1320 over here. Okay? When people look at potential evidence, when they're looking at something that they can say, this is evidence, okay? Let me give you an example. This 1320 camera, I saw a video that showed these lit up. The backs of these vehicles were lit up. And people were claiming that that was evidentiary, okay? So let me break it down to you. Let me show you again where the home is. The home's right here. And this is one of the areas where people were talking about. So when it comes to gathering evidence, it is always imperative to understand that wherever a crime is committed, there's a general distinction of where the evidence will be looked for. And in this case, the crime was here, inside this home. This says Ian and Harsh lived here according to crime law in the videotape. I think I got this from Jeff H. I really do. Who is this man walking? Because this is a lot of stuff that people have talked about. But This is where the crime happens. All right, are you with me here? So if we're going to go way over here as investigators, and we're going to look at the 1320 and we're going to look at the 1330 video cameras for evidence, because after all, that's how they found one of the passes of the Elantra was by the 1320 camera. So that would make sense that if you were going to look for any more evidence, you would be looking at this camera as you're canvassing the area, correct? So what happens though is people get fixated on these cameras. I think this camera goes from, if I remember correctly, I think I've seen the archives where it goes from like 1:30 to 6:30 in the morning or something like that. In the Linda Lane archives, I think there's that much camera footage. So think about both of these cameras if you're an investigator. I'm not talking about the police, okay? I'm not talking about the police. That's another thing that is a misconception of an investigation. The police are merely there initially to secure the location, to apprehend any kind of potential suspect that may or may not still be on the premises, okay? So when people are saying that the police investigated this wrong, that's not even true, because the police had no investigative tactics other than the investigators, the forensic scientists, the DNA expert, the people that were doing the fingerprint, photos, measurements, all these were reporting back to Corporal Payne. Okay, so he was the one that was getting all the information for his case. He did not investigate the crime scene. No matter what you think, the officers that were there that we saw the body cams of, they were not doing an investigation. They were merely documenting potential evidence in the common areas. That's why he was taking pictures in the living room. That's why he was taking pictures in the kitchen. That's why he was taking pictures out back, because these are common areas. You don't need a search warrant to have certain evidence that you're looking for come from these areas. So as you see in those photos that we've been given prevalence to, you have an understanding that there wasn't any search warrants for any of these vehicles. There wasn't any search warrant for the 1320 cam, 1330 cam. There wasn't any search warrant documents about any of the Queen Road apartments, any of these houses around the 1122 home, the 1112 home. The only thing they retrieved there was the 1112 camera. They didn't go into that home. They didn't look in that home for blood or anything else of that matter. So if you remember that the search warrant merely goes for the 1122 home. So to say that these police got this wrong, because I've heard this countless times. The MPD messed it up. They messed up the investigation. They didn't use gloves, blah, blah, blah. All this crap. Well, if we really look at the videos objectively, that means without bias, when we look at the video cam of the officer responding for the unconscious person, he does indeed glove up. He walks into the home expecting to find an unconscious person, not a quadruple homicide. So things shifted as he entered the home and he instantly realized that, okay, this is not for an unconscious person. This is, we have a homicide here. And if you've seen all the footage, all the bloody photos and everything else, you've seen that most of the crime scene was indeed on the second floor leading up to the third floor. All the luminol, all the amido black, all the stuff that they've used to identify proteins of the prevalence of blood was all in the home. Did you see any amido black over here on 1330 Linda Lane? Did you see any amido black on the 1320 on these vehicles down the road? Did you see any luminol being sprayed in the parking lots over here? Did you see them spraying luminol on the concrete as they were measuring the tire tracks? You did not. And there's a reason for that, because once again, the crime scene was in this area right here. The canvassing the area for video footage, as we know, there's certain cameras that were used to identify this individual. There was one on Ridge Road right here. I'm not going to go through it all because I don't have it memorized anymore. I've kind of forgotten it, but I'm using this as an example, because it's easy. It's easy. It comes back quickly, okay? So if a crime is committed here and you find blood over here in this parking lot, then all of a sudden, from this home, as they taped it off, they would have taped off all this area right here because it would have been because evidence was found over here. You would have seen evidence, tape, tags, everything, but there wasn't. People say MPD got it wrong. MPD contaminated. There was a cleanup. They sprayed stuff on the wall and they wiped it off. I'm no blood expert, but I do know that there's a technique on lifting blood off surfaces, and I made that video a year and something ago, live on that video. It's in my library. You want to go check it out. It might be in the members only, but I'm gonna unlock all those videos. But I did a video on that, and the individual shows how to lift blood on a swab. He shows, as you all know by now, or you should, you cannot identify a perpetrator through blood analysis. You can identify DNA from a blood sample that would lead you to a potential suspect. But without the DNA, you just can't say, well, this blood belongs to so and so. This blood belongs to so and so. It doesn't work that way. There's DNA in the blood that could potentially identify either the suspect or a victim of whose blood that is. And I hope that makes sense because many people have that misconstrued. And misconstruing that and spreading that just brings so many delusions because that you say, well, look at all the blood that they found in the house, or there was lack of blood. One other thing, the reason I'm talking like this is because I've made a lot of videos on this Idaho 4 case. If you haven't been prevalent to watch any of them, go in my library. There's tons. There's almost probably 2 years worth because I didn't start right off the bat. I didn't start my channel until a year in. Okay. But think about this. There's tons of videos where I break down certain scenarios, the knife wounds, the injuries to the victims. All these things are in my lives. They weren't very popular because it goes against exactly what people want and are pushing these days is it wasn't one perpetrator, it had to be more. Well, let me tell you a little bit about that, okay? And let me tell you a little bit about the law. Even if you don't want to say Bryan Kohberger did it alone, okay? Maybe if you're open to say, hey, Bryan was there, but he didn't kill anybody. All right, let's go that avenue. Well, I don't know about Idaho, but here, the good old state of Texas, if you're sitting in the car or you're rolling up as your buddies are coming out and you place your foot anywhere on the property, then you are just as guilty of anything and everything that they did. So let's say, for the sake of argument, I don't believe it, but for the sake of argument, because at the very beginning I was throwing around a lot of things. But for the sake of argument, let's say that there was more than one perpetrator. One went in, Bryan was the getaway driver, or whatever. The fact that he was involved anywhere near that residence of these 4 people being killed, slaughtered, murdered, would make him culpable of a quadruple murder, even if you don't believe he did it. You don't believe he was strong enough to stab anybody, don't believe he was frail, he was wobbly, he was this, he was that, whatever. Even if you don't believe that, him sitting in the car driving off with somebody else who just killed somebody would make him just as culpable as the person who plunged the knife into these people. But people don't want to say that. They just want to say, there's no way Bryan could have done that. I don't know if Bryan did it. All I know is he pled guilty to it. And that in itself tells you a lot, right? But back to the evidence here. So there's more evidence inside this home than there is outside the residence. You know, at one point I showed a video where I'd seen Fox News. They were looking at what looked like a hoodie or a coat along the tree line right here. I showed that. There was something black along there. You know, trying to coordinate, well, does that make sense? Is that part of the crime scene? And then I got to thinking, because people were saying that Maddie's coat was found over here on Taylor on this fire hydrant, which we know now in the photo that it was not. We see all the evidence inside the home, which I've always said, inside the home is where the crime was committed. So that's where the focal point of the investigation is. As far as outside the home, the focal point of the investigation was to see if anybody saw or heard or understood anything that was going on in that home during the commission of the crime. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand as well is one of the reasons the timeline is so important and has always been important is because that is the time of the crime. 2:00, the girls were supposedly sitting in Kaylee's room, blah, 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 all that, this and that and the other. That doesn't have a hill of bean to do with the crime. Everybody was still alive at that point. From 4:08 to 4:21, 2021 was the crime. So in that small time frame that was their goal. I'm going to focus on 408 to 421 as an investigator. I'm going to look for prints. I'm going to look for blood spatter analysis where I can understand exactly how the murders happened, what kind of weapon was used, possibly. This photo right here I'm about to show you. I'm going to take this off before I put this back up here. I don't know if there's anybody still here. I hope you are still here because I'm using this as not a debunking tool because I've done plenty of those. This is merely things that people have focused on as being evidence. This is not evidence. This would never be heard in the trial. If you don't know what this is the morning after. Here we have the guys standing on one side, the females on another, wrapped in blankets. At least that's what my eyeballs say this is. Your eyeballs might say otherwise. But if we're looking at this, you know why they have them in a straight line? Because they're probably observing their hands, their arms, seeing if they have any bruising on their faces, any cuts, any kind of blood that's visible to the eye, because there hasn't been any search warrants for these people because they're not suspects. They're merely witnesses. So they're interviewing, they're doing incident reports at this point to identify anything and everything that could be relevant to the commission of this crime. That's what this is. This has nothing to do with evidence. But people will make you believe that all this is important enough to call it evidence. And here's another shot. I think this is an interesting shot because it does show evidence gathering. This, and as you can tell, this person is probably in charge of taking a lot of the pictures. And guess what? Look, they're all wearing booties. This guy has gloves on. I don't know if she has gloves on, but more than likely she does. And she's taking a photograph of what she would view as potential evidence. You know why? Because it's in a general vicinity of where the crime happened. So if this was over on Linda Lane and she found this, she might still take a picture of it, but the chances of it actually being anything are slim to none. But we don't see this in that retrospect. It's never presented to the true crime community that this is how it's done. It's always presented on the malice of these people that are gathering this stuff. And here's the photo that I was telling you about. I was fixated on this for a long time because I thought this was evidence. Because there you have somebody with a camera and there's something there. But come to find out, this was not in any of the documents. So therefore, it was not evidence. Here we have individuals that are looking for evidence. And as we've seen in the new photos, some of this stuff has been in there. They are all in white, gloved up, with respirators on, not contaminating anything. Do you see any people in police uniforms dusting for prints? Do you see any people in police uniforms um, swabbing for blood? You do not. So you must ask yourself, why not? Why not? See, we were all fixated on this. Solo cups. See, somebody would tell me that looks like blood in the sink. It is not. As you can tell, he's doing what he has to do. One thing that I want to tell you guys, many of you have never investigated a crime scene, as I have not. But I can tell you, based on the knowledge that I do have of book knowledge, the investigation is not as clean cut as you would believe. Because a lot of times you don't have the ability to gather evidence as easily as you would think. See her dusting right there? She's holding light for her. Why would this person need some gloves if he's not over here potentially contaminating anything? He's wearing gloves. But these people, I heard somewhere somebody say, they weren't even identifying themselves. They didn't even show what level of agency or any of this stuff that they were from. Well, you individuals seem to think that plainclothes police officers investigate crimes. And here to show you that I wasn't lying, because I'm not a liar, no matter what people might think. Here's all my show stuff that I was going to do on September 13th, 2024. How to process a crime scene, the casting of feet, how to properly dispose of camera footage, casting, evidence collection, securing and collecting stuff, and tire impressions. And probably if you look back on September 13th, this is where this show is at. So I've done it um, way before, but like I said, it wasn't very popular at the time. Because you know what I heard somebody say? It feels like we're going to school. It feels like we're being lectured to. Well, you know what? That is real true crime. Let me show you this because I thought this was interesting. I fell down this rabbit hole for a little bit. You see all these photos? Let me ask you, based on what you know on criminal investigation or just anything regarding true crime, does anything in these photos suggest, based on what you see, not what you've heard, does anything in these photos suggest that any of these people have anything to do with the crime? Do you see any blood on them? Any blood on, did any of the blood that was collected off these items, was there any blood on these items when they were collected? Did any of these individuals have anything to link them to the crime scene? And not only the crime scene, let's go back to the timeline, okay? Because that is what is the most important thing. The timeline. Without that timeline, if you're focused on everything and anything else, you're just wasting your time. The car at most was circumstantial, but it was enough. The DNA on the knife sheath, that was scientific. We were shown this truck, and people went crazy. They went crazy. Got the killer's truck right there because we saw this video. Maddie, what did you say to Adam? It's like we're trying to piece together this truck who has nothing to do with the crime. Because how would you know? If you're, I mean, honestly, unless you're going all over Moscow trying to implicate everybody, how would you know that that truck had anything to do with the crime? How would you know? Sitting miles away on your computer as I am, how would I know? Because I heard people say so, or because I heard people mention, well, so and so drives this kind of truck. Do you hear that loud truck? Like I said in the video the other day, investigative techniques are not about hearing certain sounds that give you an association of exactly what vehicle that was. Oh, even when you hear the Elantra in the videos that we were prevalent to hear, it sounded different in most of the videos. It really did. So let me reiterate something before I get ready to call this a day. Um, when you investigate a crime, first of all, the police officers that get on scene first, they're not the investigators. The person who the case is assigned to, most of the time, is a detective. While Payne was not a detective at the point, he was assigned the case merely because, for whatever reason, he was the one given that responsibility. The detective is not a plainclothes officer, so therefore he is able to investigate. He's not a forensic expert. He's not a fingerprint expert, but that's why we do have these experts to testify in trial. Because these people are not experts. They merely gather the evidence. They don't swab the blood as plainclothes officers. They don't do any of that. That crime scene was brutal. As well as the crime scene that I've seen of Danny Rowling, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, BTK, Israel Keys, Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez. There was lots of blood in those videos, in those photos. When you're investigating You're investigating to clear, not to make a suspect, no matter what people believe. You're clearing people. And once again, everything the prosecution saw at that house, the defense was prevalent too, because that's usually first on the scene at the DA. Because he's going to be prosecuting the case, he needs to see exactly where the crime scene went down. So Bill Thompson saw everything right as it happened. And so did Ann Taylor. So to assume that the prosecution was hiding stuff from the defense is just ludicrous. She saw and heard everything the prosecution saw. And her whole outlook on the case was to save his life, to get the death penalty removed. I'm not a betting man, but if somebody is in prison and then they tell me, well, he pled to it, okay. Even if it's not this dude, they tell me he pled to it, okay. And then they tell me all of the evidence that was against them, okay. Well, how much of a timeline were we talking about? Well, this crime happened within a matter of minutes. Okay. I'm not looking at it as this individual, a movie character. Is he a TV character? Is he a fictional person who people are basing their belief off of? No. I'm basing it off of a person who any of us could know could be capable of killing at any point in time. No matter the muscle strength, the composure, the inability to walk. I've seen people in wheelchairs. I've heard of cases where people in wheelchairs have killed other people. So to say that people are impaired to the point of not being able to kill, it's a foolish defense. We've seen countless people murdered within seconds, not able to scream, not able to fight, but just sit there and be in shock that they're actually about to lose their lives. And I'm not trying to be morbid, but you know what? If you get shot or if you're stabbed or if you're beaten or any kind of consistency thereof where you're going to lose your life, I'm asking you, are you consciously going to be thinking, oh, I need to leave a clue for the police? Or are you thinking, God, I got to save myself. I need to fight to live. Those are fair questions. Because to many, they believe that as you're sitting there fighting and using your last breaths, you're thinking, I'm about to die, so I better leave a clue for the police to let them know who the real killer was. To let them know who the real killer was. Did you hear what I said? God is saying that the person that is dying has forethought that people are going to not believe this person was the killer. But that's how people don't listen to what other people say. They just listen to how they want to direct the sheep to herd them into the pens, to continue feeding them, controlling them, and manipulating them with all the, it doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. There's too many questions. This case is crazy. Well, let me ask you this question, all right? Because any true crime connoisseur, Anybody that loves true crime, from all the crime shows we've ever watched, at the end of those crime shows, the commentator, whether it be Bill Curtis, whether it be any of the others, the dude from Dateline, any of those people, do they leave you in retrospect saying, well, you know, everything I just presented to you in this hour, none of it makes sense. And I don't believe that they have the real person. We must dig deeper. No, they don't. And there's a reason why. It's called closure. It's called closure. So if people that are presenting this situation on YouTube in a continuum, what is keeping them from gaining closure when closure's already been gained? Why am I talking about it? I'm talking about it because I want to educate people on the realness of investigative practices versus the fairy tale stuff that's being pushed every day. You know, if you're attacked, ambushed, and you're being stabbed 31 times, 51 times, backed in the face, this and that and the other, and you're about to die, and you know it. You know it's over, it's coming. You just saw your boyfriend or your best friend get stabbed and killed. You know it's coming. I ask you, are you going to be looking for some blood to scribble a name on the concrete or in your car? How come Nicole Simpson didn't write out OJ's name on the steps? How come Gianni Versace didn't write out Cunanan's initials on the steps? How come the Ukrainian girl didn't put an arrow to the seat behind her to identify her killer? Because in reality versus fiction, that doesn't happen. It feels good whenever, you know, you're pushing this stuff. It gets the audience riled up because the more ambivalence that you create, the more people are willing to change their thought from yesterday. I can't stand to go into chats these days because it's almost like a rehearsal of all the years you see the same comment, the same questions, the same rhetoric, the same people talking the same way, chatting as they're an expert. Well, you know that Amito Black, it was all over the place, so there wasn't any blood. What were they looking for? What were they looking for? Unlike the true crime genre on YouTube, investigators really know their job. And I want to send a shout out to Stephanie, the defense attorney on TikTok, and she has a channel here. Make sure you go check her out, man. She knows her stuff. So does Amy Samtoro or something. They know their stuff, man. And they're not condescending, no matter what people might think they are. You only think somebody's condescending if you're looking at life through those lenses. And kind of like the title I have, through the lens of the camera, focus occurs. If you don't want focus, you just keep looking for clarity in the lens of a kaleidoscope. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed that. And I hope that you tell people about the channel if you haven't already. And I will see you soon, and you take care of yourself and your families. And once again, I am your host, 12 Gauge. This is my channel, 12 Gauge Investigative. Maestro, cue that music.